Good day, my wonderful and successful international students. I am very happy to see you, and I'm very happy to announce that if you're a subscriber, you probably already saw a slight change in the name of our channel. And this video is meant to explain what this is about. For many years, since the year 2016, when I started this channel, I started this channel because as a teacher of international students, it was very important for me to give to my students the opportunity to see their work, their wonderful videos for several of the classes that I've been teaching for many years. And you can probably go back and you're going to be able to find a lot of videos related to many different topics. For many years, as you know, I've been teaching business communication. I've been teaching intercultural communication for business, mostly project management classes, of course. And in many of the videos that you probably have seen in our channel, we have 117 videos. We have videos related to different topics, always, as I already mentioned, well, related to the classes that I was teaching, right? And the reason for this video is to tell you that we're going to have a slight change. If you already realized, the name of the channel has changed. Now we're going to be focusing more in successful international students. And many of the videos that I'm going to be recording are going to be focused mostly in helping either future, current, or even former international students, telling their stories, sharing what is it that has helped all these successful international students around the world be successful. And if you have been one of my students, you probably know these topics because we usually have talked about how now not everything it's about grades, right? And not everything is about textbooks, not everything is about exams, etc. Once you decide to be an international student, there are so many other topics that are going to be key in your success. And many of these topics are not related to the academics, right, of studying abroad. So this is our new mission. Our new mission for this channel is going to be talking about topics that go beyond the grades, beyond the textbooks, beyond all the academic work that I am sure many of you are already working on, etc. But there are many secrets to being successful when you decide to study abroad. And many of these topics are not, again, related to that. And what you're going to see is that we're going to be talking in several videos about some practical skills that are going to help you adapt better to a new environment. There are so many different topics, so many different areas, so many different challenges that we go through when we decide to be international students. And let's be honest, schools, universities, they mostly focus, of course, in helping us academically, but not a lot of schools or universities help us to try to understand, okay, how do I deal with, I don't know, adapting, maybe networking in this new country? How do I deal with loneliness? How do I deal with networking in a new environment? So there are so many different topics that I believe are important. And many students throughout the years have also shared with me that I wish I knew how to do this, or I wish I had known what to do once I arrive into a new country as an international student. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be sharing a lot of topics, and I'll tell you in a minute many of those topics that we'll be talking about. But what this means to you, if you're one of the 111 subscribers that have been following me for years, well, we're going to go into more depth into many of these topics. We're going to be also inviting many other voices because even though I have a lot of experience with international students, well, I'm not an expert in many of these topics, so we're going to be having some guests. And something else that you're going to be seeing is that I will be inviting many of my former successful international students, and they will be sharing their stories and sharing what was that really helped them adapt, feel better, network, and be successful in this new country. And this is important also for you to understand. This channel is for everyone who is willing to study abroad and moving to any country in general. I have been blessed enough in this past 12, 13 years to be teaching international students from different parts of the world. If you don't know me, let me introduce myself very quickly. My name is Ada Sandoval, Madrid. And for many, many years, I was first an academic coordinator for international high school in Mexico. That was in Mexico. Later, I was the director for internationalization and academic mobility for Universidad Latina de America. That was in Mexico too. And more recently, I have been working at Vancouver Community College as an instructor for international students for the past 3 years. And what is important also for you to know is that many of the videos that you're going to see before this video, of course, are related to many of those roles that I had. And the stars in all these videos are always my students, right? And I hope in this new chapter, in this new mission that we have for this channel, I really hope to have the opportunity to bring many of those voices, because everything I have learned, it's also because of students sharing their experiences with me. So as I already mentioned, we're going to be having some experts, we're going to be having some guests, and I believe that, and again, I'm going to be bringing some experts that are going to help us. There are topics like, for example, intercultural communication, adapting to different multicultural ways of working, right? Adapting to also how in new environments people see values, principles. And this is not, of course, about not being who we are. I always tell my students, you're unique and you're perfect and you're already valuable the way you are. But when you become an international student, there's always a confusion, right? Because we're arriving into a new environment, and sometimes we get confused with our own identity, about how to bring our own culture, of course, and our own values into a new environment where perhaps our values are seen differently. And I always tell my students, it's not better or worse how things are seen in other countries. It's just different. And learning those differences, I have seen it has been a key for many of my former international students to be successful. So we're going to be focusing a little bit on that in many of the videos that we'll be talking about. So there are three main topics then that we're going to be discussing during all these videos that I'll start to share starting now, January 2026. The first thing is intercultural mastery. We're going to be talking about how is it that we can learn to work, for example, with people from other countries. Let me give you an example. Here in Canada, I have students in the same classroom, students from India, students from Philippines, students from Korea, students from the United States, from Mexico, from Colombia, etc. And sometimes one of the challenges that I realize, it's a big challenge sometimes, is how do we adapt to working in teams when we have projects, when maybe working in a team is different in many of these countries, and sometimes we cannot even focus in the objective of the academic project because we have to go through all these challenges about how to communicate with each other, how to get organized, etc. And those are big challenges once you become an international student. Another topic that we're going to be talking, of course, about is practical skills, individual practical skills. As I already said, for example, we're going to talk about how to deal with loneliness, right? Or mental health. I have realized, for example, here in Canada, that for many of my students coming from many different countries, mental health is a topic we don't talk about because in many of our cultures, this is actually a topic that is taboo, right? We never talk about feeling lonely, sad, etc. However, if we are not able to tackle this issue, if we're not able to take care of ourselves as well, nothing is going to work. As I already said, we have to go beyond the grades. And that's why we're going to be talking about the unspoken curriculum. And these topics will be important and they will give you, usually, they're going to give you those ideas, those strategies, those tools to survive and overcome all these difficulties that you will be having once you become an international student. And finally, we're going to be talking about the professional know-how. Once that you are already in another country, okay, not only you're a student, but you're also looking for jobs, right? And working professionally speaking, there are also many tips, many tactics, many strategies that are going to help you be more successful in an environment that is very different from the environment that you have been probably working in, living in, etc. So as you can see, we are going to provide a map, a guide of different topics that I hope are interesting for you. Now, my promise, let me tell you a little bit about why I am here talking to you. In all these years, 13 years, 12 years, I have been blessed to have the opportunity to guide almost 5,000 students in all these different roles that I already explained to you, either as an academic coordinator, as a director of international academic mobility, or as an instructor of international students now in Canada. I have seen so much happening. I have seen successful stories, but I have also seen stories of people who, at the end, even though they are successful, academically speaking, they end up returning to their home countries, maybe not having been able to achieve what they were dreaming. And this kills me, of course, because I always tell my students when I arrive into class number one, to me, you are all diamonds. I can see how talented you are. And if you already made it as an international student, that means that you have already overcome so many different challenges, right? Academic challenges. You passed exams. You went through all the procedures, all the administrative procedures that you had to go through to be accepted in a foreign university or educational institution. And yet, when you arrive into the country, there are so many other challenges and sometimes even obstacles that nobody told us about. So, let me tell you why I'm really, really committed to this new mission. If you know me and if you have been my student, you know this story. I was an exchange student when I was 15 years old. When I was 15 years old, I moved from Mexico to Seattle, Washington, to become an exchange student. So I went to high school, okay, in the United States. And I cannot begin to tell you how difficult that was. Not only because, of course, English is not our first language, right? It's our second language. So that's the first challenge. And even though this challenge is not going to tackle the learning of the languages, because that's for other channels and for other experts to talk about, sometimes there are so many things that go beyond a new language, right? Customs, traditions, as I already mentioned, the everyday living situation that people go through in a different country, sometimes they are so alien to us coming from different cultures. So I lived that experience when I was 15 years old. I came back to Mexico, of course, but then I had the chance to work with international colleagues all around the world because I was an instructional supervisor for many years and I was in charge of traveling to other countries around the world to train instructional supervisors, sometimes directors, operational directors, sales representatives on how to adapt our brand. I was a brand helping the brand manager, how to adapt the sales, the product to different countries. So back then, almost 20 years ago, I learned the importance of tropicalization, which means adapting to every culture. And I realized every country is so different. And for example, let me give you an example. We were planning to sell the same product in Colombia, right? In Brazil, in Argentina, in Puerto Rico, Costa Rica. And even when we traveled to Europe to learn from other countries, in Italy, in Germany, the same product, we couldn't sell the same product using the same strategies, using the same tools. Why? Because every culture is different, right? And in another video, I will tell you one of our not very successful stories about what happened when we were not able to adapt to the Brazilian market, for example, and how our first attempt to make sales and make our product successful, they failed. So I'll tell you that story some other day. But I have so many stories to share with you. And just like we're going to learn, of course, from the failures, of course, we're going to learn also from the success stories. All right. So we have a lot to talk about there. And now, more recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, I moved to Canada to study my second postgraduate degree in an MBA in business. And even though I had a lot of experience, of course, with visiting other countries, living abroad, of course, living in Canada implied many other challenges. A lot of people, for example, believe that, oh, moving to the US is the same as moving to Canada, or moving to the UK is the same as moving to Australia. It is not. It is very, very different. And every country has particular differences on how international students can adapt and how international students can be more successful in all these different environments. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. Sometimes I will be sharing my own personal experiences, but sometimes we will be sharing experiences from other successful international students. Okay, now, in order for this to work, okay, this new mission, this new change we're having in our channel, I need you. And that means if you have been one of my students, if I have had the amazing opportunity to have you in my classrooms, either digital classroom or in-person classroom, I need you. I need you to share in the comments, please. What do you think have been some of those techniques, strategies, or tools that you have learned, perhaps, that have helped you become more successful as an international student? For example, I have had students from Bolivia who moved to Germany. And I'm sure Gabby is going to be one of our guests one day, and she's going to share with us how that went through. And of course, I have Paulo, who from Colombia moved to Mexico, and that was also challenging. You might think, oh, because we all speak Spanish is the same. It's not. Different countries, very different challenges, right? And of course, we're going to be sharing stories about many of my students I have from India, from the Philippines, moving to Canada, of course. But I also have, for example, Erica from Mexico, who moved to France. How did she adapt to that? And I currently have former students who are working with the United Nations, for example. I have students working all around the world. So this is about learning and knowing about their stories and learning about what helped them become successful. So as you can see, you're not going to be bored because it's not going to be only me talking all the time. Now let's talk about the language. As you can tell, of course, English is not my first language. And I know I have a strong accent. Why? Because I am Mexican. And even though I have lived in the United States and now I am living in Canada, Of course, I understand English is not my first language, but this is almost done on purpose because English is our global language. And when we can communicate in English, and if we keep recording all these videos in English, we're going to give more students around the world, international students around the world, the opportunity to learn from all their experiences. We're also going to have my good friends Roberto and Alfonso, who moved to China to study their postgraduate degree. But also we have Leroy, who moved from Africa to China as well to study a postgraduate degree. And the challenges are so different. So I just wanted to make sure we understood that, yes, we welcome people with accents because that's who we are. We international students, this is part of who we are too, and that makes you already perfect. So do not worry if you think your accent is going to be an obstacle. No, it's about trying to communicate. And I am sure we're going to have wonderful experiences and wonderful guests coming to tell and share their own stories. Now, as I already mentioned in the comments, if you have been one of my students, please share those tools, those strategies that have helped you. Or if you're planning to become an international student, also share in the comments your questions and your doubts. I have to emphasize this channel is not about immigration. This channel is not about language teaching or learning, okay? We're going to be focusing on in that unspoken curriculum. Yes, as I already mentioned, all those hacks, life hacks that have nothing to do with the academics of becoming an international student. But I bet if you are able to share those doubts, those questions, we might be able to have an answer for you. And finally, this is a global classroom and it is in session. So I'm really looking forward to the upcoming videos. Sometimes I will be sharing, as I already mentioned, for example, topics like how to combat loneliness, for example, how a GPA, a good GPA is not enough. That's going to be one of our upcoming videos. But also, I will be talking sometimes about topics related to some of the books that I'm reading. One of our upcoming videos, for example, The Perfect Trap. We're going to be talking about how do I deal with this idea that I have to be perfect because everybody back home is expecting me to be perfect, to get the best grades. You know, I'm here almost representing not only my country, but my family. But how do we deal with that imposter syndrome that makes me think I'm not good enough? So you international students, I know what you're going through because I've been there too. And I see my students going through. So don't worry, okay? Take a seat, make sure you're comfortable because we're going to be presenting videos in which we're going to be talking about all these interesting topics. And finally, remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about having an open mind and having the willingness to learn. We are all confused when we are about to become international students. We're all scared and we are all filled with insecurities, right? But I believe that the secret is just to have an open mind, to have the right attitude. And if you already are convinced that becoming an international student is for you, you're not alone. We're going to help you. We're going to guide you, and we're going to make sure in the future you're also one of my successful international students. Thank you very much, and I can't wait for all the upcoming videos that we have for you. Thank you, and don't forget, it's not only about studying abroad, it's about thriving abroad. You got this, and I believe in you. Ciao.